Szeretném felkonferálni első előadónkat, Mark Wallist, aki, ha már valaki az élő történelemmel esetleg ismerős egy kissé, akkor őt nyugodtan lehet nevezni ennek az atyának, mind az Egyesült Királyságban, mind egyébként itt Magyarországon. Én személyesen nagyon kedves mesteremnek tartom őt, és hatalmas öröm, hogy felkonferálhatom I Will Trick You Into Learning című előadását. Úgyhogy kérem, fogadják szeretettel és nagy tapssal Mark Wallist.
Can you hear me with it? Well, not. Yes, no, again, nem. Hello? Is it? Use the microphone. Yes? Is this better? That's, yeah. But I've come to your country for many, many occasions, for many, many years, and do a lot of work at Egrivar, or have done a lot of work at Egrivar. Friends, the terrible time that the whole world has gone through, I'm not even thinking about Ukraine, but I mean the virus killed so many things, did it not? And I'm about to give you a talk about what I used to do when I first knew Annette and Adam and other people here, other friends here. My company has been destroyed by COVID because it is live performance. Living history, museum theatre, whatever words we want to use to describe it, like acting and concerts, just finished, did it not? So this means that the work I used to do no longer happens. But I am happy to be here today to share some of the things that we used to do which remain true. For many, many years, for 35 years, I have been running my company, and I have discovered ways, as some of you know from knowing me before, to bring history to life for visitors. Are you understanding me? I think you are. Yes, no? You get them? Audience participation, come along. Yes, good. You're understanding me, and I'll carry on. So, what I want to share with you are some of the things that we have done, things that I consider to be good practice. Just because I'm telling you doesn't mean you have to do it. Of course not. You can find your own ways. But we must think to ourselves, wherever we work, in a library, in a collection, in a museum, why are the visitors coming? What is it that they want? And I will share with you this. I used to think, we worked at the Tower of London every day for 27 years, every day in costume. It's amazing. The Tower of London, as you know, if you have been there, or even if you have not been there, is a famous place. So tourists always go to the Tower of London, whatever else. So they may not understand it. There's more than one tower. There's 20 bloody towers for a start. So it's a place to go to. I used to think, I went to the Tower of London and I learned this. You learnt this fact. You have to learn history, but add to it this. I went to the Tower of London and I felt this. Books can make you understand things. Performance can make you feel things. And combining the two things, I think, is very important. So when I was running the company, some of the best people to work in costume were teachers. All of you, when you were young, I hope, had a good teacher who inspired you, yes? Who made you feel for the subject. Whatever the subject was, history, geography, languages, but someone who has passion inside them, and that passion comes across to you. So I would say, doing museum theatre, doing living history, doing live interpretation, all names for the same thing, people in costume, bringing you into the past. I will trick you into learning with a laugh was my motto, still is my motto. It doesn't mean that you have to make the public laugh, but the light in their eyes that tells you, this has been fun. Together, we have learned something. And you help them cross the bridge from 2022 into 1522, or whatever it is. Do you see? So for that, you need techniques, you need tricks, and I will share with some of you now. Storytelling. I'm hopeless at technology. My phone is, by the way, is still on Greenwich Mean Time. It's still on English time. So I thought, I've got an hour for breakfast. I finally found a cab stuck in the traffic jam. I thought, I'm going to be like, I kept messaging him. He didn't do anything. I thought, no, I think he doesn't care or he didn't see it. But I got here just in time. Deo gracias. There we go. I will trick you into learning with a laugh is the full quote from the English composers Gilbert and Sullivan in the late 1800s. By a laugh, what they mean is if you're enjoying yourself, you relax. And when you relax, you can take in information, can you not? You can take in learning. So these are some of the good things and some of the difficult things about live interpretation. What do we do? What did we do? What we may do again? What you are doing? All these things. You can see a lot of stuff going on. From jousting, always very popular. Real metal armor. It's not plastic, it's the real stuff. Those of you that know what the work we do at Egrivar know that we are as authentic as you are. I began as a reenactor and have a huge amount of passion for reenactment. To a melodrama play there, to sword fighting on foot, to a famous Tudor person. King Henry had 6 wives, so you've got a lot to choose from, haven't you? Dancing there and music. So as an example of the many things we would do, and our biggest client, destroyed by COVID, was the historic royal palaces. 5 palaces that the Queen owns but does not live in. They're a charity. And they had enough money, because they had no money from the Queen, no money from the government, only money coming from people who come to the Tower of London and the other palaces within the group. That meant that they wanted quality, and they could afford to have what they wanted. They could afford to have us for 27 years. So, but that now is finished. 2020 was terrible, 2021, pretty bad. Now we sort of keep going. You have to keep going. I used to say we go from Stonehenge to Sainsbury's or Safeways or the modern shopping mall. We could be asked anything by clients. Every day was the royal palaces, but there were many other clients too. And if you've been to Britain, you will know the National Trust, English Heritage, local councils, local museums. This thing, Stonehenge. Have any of you been to Stonehenge? Some of you have? Right. Well, here it is in a in a shopping mall made of rubber. These things made it all plastic. And the idea was to try and get people who were busy shopping with their kids to understand how Stonehenge was built. If you've ever worked in a shopping mall, it is hell on earth, hasn't it? Because they're not there for you. Leave me alone, you idiots. They've come shopping. So there are some things gigs you do not want to have. But we did this one. It was for the BBC, so that's pretty good. Here at the Tower of London, doing some medieval cooking, people couldn't believe that these were actual animals being roasted. Can you believe it? They thought they were plastic. They're like Disney, you know? We actually heard men say to their kids, "Don't worry, darling, it's not real." It's not. Well, of course it's bloody real. We saw the guy skin the rabbit and put it on a frame, so that's mad. And so, the Middle Ages. 2 supermarkets, again for the BBC, and then right up to 1,000 years of fashion at the Tower of London, so the 1960s in that particular picture. Despite the fact that you are Hungarian and I'm English, we have the different languages, but we are still human beings. Despite the fact that these people lived a few years ago and some lived 1,000 years ago, they still have many of the same fears, do they not? And hopes and dreams. So our job as museum historians, as educators, as storytellers, is to find the common thread between us now and them in the past. Do you understand? If you can find that bridge, like the chain bridge, you will bring them across the bridge into your time. That's what we try and do. Obviously, working for the royal palaces, we have many different kings. Who's the one in the middle, do you know? Who had 6 wives? Come on, you know. Henry VIII, yes. But we've had other fat kings called Henry too, so that's quite confusing. There's Queen Victoria, Edward I. If you're just doing a king, imagine doing your King Matias Corvinus. Is that Matias Corvinus? If you just had someone being Matias Corvinus wearing his crown, then he's not much of a king. A king needs, and a queen needs, people around them, do they not? It isn't just the crown that makes you the king, it's the people who help you and live your life. And that's what we try and make sure that the king, I would say this to you as a bit of advice, Arpad, never have a king or a queen on their own. You can have a duke or a duchess or a lady, but most of these rich people, all these rich people, had people who looked after them. Everything, combing their hair, giving them their clothes. As you know, a great honor to serve the king or the queen, like your King Matias in the 15th century, who I understand a bit about. So if you are asked by a client to have King Matias, say, yes, is there any money in the budget for an attendant, for a servant? Yes? I would always say to my clients, okay, you have money for one person. That can be a man or a woman. If you have money for a second person, that should be a woman or a man. Do you understand? You need both sexes. You need both genders. People coming will be men and women. I'm not going to get into the trans debate, but you know what I mean. So there'll be men and women, and their kids, boys and girls. So try and get the different point of view from a woman as from a man in the past. Then, if there's even more money, perhaps, or another way of doing things, have a servant with a master or their mistress. Because the life of a servant is very different. The life of a farm worker in Hungary in the 19th century is very different from the life of someone who's a businessman in the 19th century in Budapest. So try and get all the points of view that you can, a man's and a woman's, a working person, a rich person, as much as you can bring to life. It helps the visitors understand what you are doing. To ruffians. Exactly. That's me stealing the crown jewels at the Tower of London. Every day, for years we did this, firing guns in the Tower of London. We're bloody lucky we weren't put in prison, you know. Because you're running, I mean, the soldiers are there the whole time with real guns. These are little cap guns, but they're quite nice. All types of life is there. Where? Well, palaces, gardens, castles, galleries. You can be a very good museum educator in a gallery like that. Obviously, if you're in a place like Egrivar and the whole around you is historical, that helps your impersonation and that helps the visitors understand your time. If they come and see you, in, let's say, a Budavar, they must understand you, understand your costume, understand the way you're standing, understand your language, understand what's going on, whilst at the same time, an aeroplane might go overhead, people might just want a photograph. Do you see? All those things can burst your bubble. You are trying to get the public, the visitors, into your time period. Many things can fight against that. So the more help you get, the better. But if you're really good as a storyteller, it doesn't matter where you are. You can do a fantastic medieval presentation in this very room right now, because it's the power of the storytelling that gets it across. Am I making sense to you? Is it, yeah? If I'm going too fast, please tell me. So, who are the best people to do this sort of work? I say recruiting the best people. As I mentioned earlier, I've found that teachers can often be the very, very good at this work, because teachers have to process a lot of difficult information and sell it to the kids, don't they? And again, as I said before, I hope we can all remember one teacher or two when we were little who inspired us with their love of the subject. That's what you need, that passion. You have that passion, or you would not be here today, would you? You prove already by your presence. So when I first started this, I hired actors, because I thought to myself, actors, they can perform, and that's great. I was working in America. I came back to Britain in 1987 when the whole history boom was taking off in my country, and everybody wanted history. I thought, this is great. I had learned from the Americans ways of doing things, and I added my own English version to it. Then I thought, let's get actors. I was working in a medieval manor house, a fantastic place in the country. The actors were great at performing, but as soon as they had done their performance, they went in to sit down in their room, put on their, light a cigarette, read the paper. They didn't really care for history. They were in it for the money. Because if you're an actor, you want to be on stage. That's why you're an actor, or in a film. But most people don't get that. Most people have to work in a shop or stack shelves, don't they? So for these actors that I hired, they were wonderful at interview because they knew how to act. They completely charmed me. I thought, these people will be wonderful. They were all lazy, except when they were performing. And I thought, this isn't right. You are working in a history of a manor house which has incredible history to it and wonderful stories to tell. Do not please shortchange the public. So then I thought, okay, maybe these actors haven't worked. Maybe I will use academics, people who love history, and they've written many theses and other proofs. But if you're standing in a codpiece like this and saying to a bunch of strangers, come and be my friends, that's a pretty weird job. So some academics were freaked out by having to wear a costume and talk to the public. I know some musicians who are wonderful musicians, but they hide behind their instrument. They're playing away. If someone speaks to them, that freaks them out. Same with archaeologists. They like to be in the dirt with things that are not going to speak back. Or gardeners. Plants don't speak back. Animals don't. Well, they can fight back, but generally they don't. So if you're dealing with humans, I then thought, well, okay, a balance of actors who can perform and a balance of academics who understand the history and love with a passion the history of their ancestors. And those are the people that I had. Until COVID, we had 120 people working for us every day, which is amazing. How do you do it? Training. Can you imagine, can you understand why I have these two pictures up here? What are they saying? I bet Annette knows. Which one looks more authentic to you, more historically correct? Yeah, this one. What's the difference, folks, that we are seeing between these two pictures? We're talking about costume here now. Hair, yes. Go on, Annette, you're right. And because?
Probably their underwear.
Yeah.
It's different. They wear themselves.
These are girls very pretty, so I don't mind that. But I do mind the fact they're not wearing stays. They're not wearing a corset to hold them up. And they've got their hair down. I'm a costume historian and a costume designer, but my second degree is in theatre history. As a costume historian, like all of you, I am sick to death of TV with women with their hair down because it's modern and it's sexy and it's now, and it drives me crazy. And men with no neckwear or no hats. And the more this goes on, the more you will get this. And people will think this is real. This is not real. The hair is down. They have nothing on their head. Okay, if they're virgins, that you expect that. 3 virgins in one place? Not very likely. And they're not wearing any stays. So that's a no-no. This is how it should be. At least that's what I think. You are free, of course, to disagree. In 2014, a terrible thing happened at Hampton Court Palace, and they appointed a woman who is pure theatre. She hated history. Her job included live interpretation in it. She dropped that. She just stayed with the theatre. I don't mind theatre. My degrees are in it as well. But that's the different thing. I firmly believe, friends, that these places that we work in are dramatic places as it is. You don't need a stage, but what you don't need is this. Public thought, what the hell is this? This woman who was brought in 2014 and then kicked out 2 years later was trying to bring avant-garde theatre to these old palaces. I would say there is an occasion for that in the evening. You come to visit a place in the evening and there's a different atmosphere, yes? You can sit down, you can have some food and drink and things. But if you're visiting Hampton Court Palace, and a visit would last about 1 and maybe 2 hours for a public with their kids, visitors, you do not want to spend half an hour watching this that was never explained. We thought, what the hell is this shit, frankly, all about? In the evening, I thought, okay, have a few glasses of wine, you can see something a bit avant-garde and a bit trendy, that's okay, you don't mind that, open mind. But in the daytime, people were totally confused. And what happened? We were forced to watch this, we in our costumes, in our Stuart costumes, 16th Baroque costumes. And the public, instead of watching that, turned their back on this and talked to us. We were told not to do that, but what can you do when the public vote with their feet? That's it. So if you are going to use historic places for theatre, I would say they are different spaces. Dramatic things can happen in them, but our job is storytellers, I would say. As further proof, at the Tower of London, this bloody woman brought in some actors who were quite good actors, you know, nothing against that. At the Tower of London, the public didn't know what to do. If you see someone sobbing on the street, oh, help me, you tend to walk around, don't you? You don't say, can I help you? Some actor in a crappy costume, just sobbing away with a hair down, no hat on, going on like that. People think, especially the English, we are like you Modios. We are both of us, I think, we are both of us quite shy people. Not the Scots, but the English. And the Hungarians are quite shy, not the Irish at all. The Welsh, perhaps. So when you see something like this in an historic thing, and you haven't come to the Tower of London to see a play, you've come to the Tower of London to see the Crown Jewels, the Ravens, the Beefeaters, and we are also there in costume. But they don't know that. Doesn't matter. We're not famous. The Beefeaters are famous. The Ravens are famous. The Crown Jewels are famous. This was irrelevant. It made no sense to their visit. How am I doing, Adam? He's watching me. Oh, good. I would rather have this, in which you're engaging tons of people. Costume. Do I need to say anything at all? Nothing. Nemsabod. This is what it is. We spent a lot of money on our costumes, and I've said this before in Hungary, down the years. All of you know, Adam knows, you wonderful living historians know, if you spend money on the costume, it will, I know that you know this too, it will repay itself 100 times, because the public are fascinated. But some reenactors, at least in Britain and in America, where I've worked a lot, say they're reenacting soldiers, and their story begins and ends with the button or the bayonet. But to me, and to all of you, there is much more than just that. I believe that the costume is a starting point, it's swimming, it's diving into the pool. A good costume with good props doesn't have to be a rich person, it can be a poor person. Handmade, hand-woven, hand-dyed, proper accessories, all these things that you know about. All these things draw the public in. If the public come and see you, maybe at first they're a bit scared. They think, I don't want to be made a fool of, I'll be careful. But if you're doing something, like medieval writing, or you're sewing something or whatever, or you're cooking something, that will draw the public into you. It's a very soft way of approaching them. Rather than just striding up and say this, it's much more subtle to do that, I think. But you can do both, it depends. So costume-wise, it's along the right lines. You can see what it's meant to be, but the fabrics aren't good and things, and the shapes aren't there. There's not enough structure to them. There's not enough proper clothing. So we like the details. Doing 2,000 years of history in those days, from the Romans in Britain to the 1970s, meant a lot of costumes, a lot of knowledge, a lot of accessories, a lot of props. Do you see? So there we have an example of that. Yeah. Now, absolute shit. The costume designer got a prize. They hardly wore any bloody clothes at all. Why did she get a prize for dressing people like? I mean, absolute rubbish. It makes me so angry. All you can say before I've got a strong heart, luckily, otherwise it's going to burst. All I can say is, at least this shit. If this draws people to Hampton Court Palace and learns the real history, then that's a job done. Yes, perhaps a means to an end. Any road will take you there, perhaps. Why? Instead of this, and this, that's the reason why we do it. This isn't Lord of the Rings, which I love, or Game of Thrones, which I love. These are real people. These are our ancestors. So don't they deserve some credit, some dignity, do you not think? So look at the sources. Look at the paintings, the sculptures, the tomb monuments. Again, nothing. What is it with hair and this, you see? That's us doing Victorian cooking at a place. In character. It's quite rare to find people working in character who are cooking, being what we call first person, not third person. Because of this, look at that. Wonderful, 1880. Look at that structure in these Victorian, they happen to be English, but they could be Hungarian, any civilized country in Europe, the same look. Rigid, respectable, dignified. No one wants to look like Baldric, do they? If you look like Baldric, you're not going to get anywhere in life. This was the worst experience of my life. Boring, man. This is us, Tower of London, drawing people in, storytelling. He's doing storytelling. I can shut up or go on. What's the time? How much is some time? Is it 1 minute? Is it 5 minutes?
3 minutes.
3. Oh, good, perfect.
Tons of time.
I don't know what to say. I'm usually. It's just that it's been a wonderful ride, and coming to places like Hungary to work, or other places that we go to, or that I go to help train people, has been is still being a tremendous privilege, an honor, and a delight. Because all that I have said, and all that I will say today and other occasions, you do not have to take as gospel. It's just my experience down 35 or so years has led me to certain conclusions. I find this will work better than that. For instance, if I'm in character and Annette is in character and we're playing a scene and you're visiting Anna, is it? Anna? So I don't want to make Anna feel uncomfortable. So I will say, you listen to me, wife. Do you see she never listens to me? So I will be angry at you because you're in character with me. You can play with your fellow costumed interpreter, but never be harsh to the guests. Never, ever, ever. I would say, make the guests feel small. In my working life, all across the world, I've seen so many people, reenactors, actors, costume historians, who think it is funny to be the big like this. One example, and then I will shut up, Adam, 1 minute, less than a minute. At Colonial Williamsburg in Virginia, where I've worked for many, many years as a visiting artistic director, I saw one guy in his wig and his three-cornered hat and standing with a stick, and a little boy, pushed by his father, because sometimes parents will push their kids like a sacrificial victim to the slaughter. You know, go and ask him who he is, Johnny. Please, sir, who are you? And instead of being nice, the man in costume who could have spoken to the kid he said, don't you know who I am? Great, you prick. Because now the little boy goes home, wets the bed, and hates history for the rest of his life. Job done. So always be aware that we are here to serve them. We're here to serve history, our ancestors, the public. And I will say one thing, and then I will be quiet. Whatever else you say about what I say, you can disagree, it's your privilege. But one thing I would say will be carved on my grave, and that is this. We are there for the public first, then for the client, and then for our own egos. You need enough ego to do this work, because it's weird to work in costume with people who are total strangers. That's a weird thing. So many actors have too much ego. Some people don't have enough. You need enough to keep you through. You're there for the public, to bring them in the bridge across to your time. You're there for the site, the place that hopefully pays you, or at least that wants you to be there to interpret their history. And the third place is for your own ego. I would say never ever change those three things. Or if you do think you can change them, tell me why. And I'll tell you to wear a hat or do something with your hair. Thank you. Köszönöm szépen.